What's up everyone and welcome back to Reload Reacts episode 47. My name is Trey and today we are going to look through r/ProRevenge, the subreddit for those who get back at the ones who wrong them and are usually quite good at doing it. This first post is by Drunken Black Belt. Pyramid scheme scammer ends up paying in the end. About 6 or 7 years ago, I was trying to enlist into the military. I ended up not joining, but that's for another time. At this point, I was led to believe I was about 4 months away from leaving for boot camp. I was running out of savings and needed a part-time job for spending some cash while I waited around. So I did what any enterprising 20-something-year-old would do, and searched Craigslist for jobs. I normally hate sales jobs, especially those based on commissions, but figured it would be a great way to earn some extra cash short term. Found a few job listings that looked promising and put out some applications. A few days later, I received a call from David. He was opening up a new store and needed associates. He liked my resume and asked if I'd be available for an interview on Friday morning. I was very upfront with him and let him know that the distance was a bit more than I'd normally drive for a retail job, and asked what he was offering for an hourly rate to see if it was worth the drive. He told me that they were planning on offering an hourly rate in the mid-teens along with commission. Seemed like an okay deal, so I agreed to be there Friday at 8 AM. Friday arrives as a cold, rainy day. I wear a nice shirt and tie and drive in heavy traffic to the address David provided. I knew the area from a previous job and eventually found the strip mall I was looking for. However, I'm not seeing any signage for the company name that was listed. There is, however, one empty space with no signage and 2 people inside. Okay, maybe they haven't gotten the store set up yet. No big deal. I had arrived early, knowing how bad traffic can be in that area. While in my car, I witnessed a young lady in business casual dress remove a sign from the window stating "Retail space for rent. Call 1-800 blah blah." Okay, a little weird, but maybe it's the first day in the space. I walk in about 5 minutes early and immediately my BS meter goes from yellow to the highest level, black watch plaid. The tables are all simple plastic folding tables, the kind college kids would buy for beer pong while on a shopping trip to Target. The walls are plastered with laminated charts featuring tons of dollar signs, smiling faces from stock photos, and an organizational chart showing an all too familiar shape. A pyramid. God damn it. Alright, might as well have fun for a while to wait out traffic going home. The young lady in the dress approaches me, introducing herself as Cindy. She welcomed me to company name and asked me to have a seat. She sat at her desk, another plastic table, and pretended to go through paperwork. However, she was really just shuffling papers around. We get to chatting, and I ask her how long she's worked for David. She says she's been his secretary for about 6 months and that I'm going to love it here. Eventually, a guy walks out of the back office, early 30s, clean cut, wearing an ill-fitting suit from J.C. Penney's. As he's walking over, all smiles, Cindy says, "Oh Dennis, our new recruit is here." The guy stops in his tracks and gives her a cold stare. "It's David, Cindy. We've been over this." He turns back to me and gives me the brightest, hard to find good help these days smile. David sits me down and welcomes me, saying they are going to start with a group interview and has me sit down in a circle of chairs. Eventually, more people come in and sit down. David gets up and begins to thank us all for coming. He tells us about an exciting new opportunity from Cutco. He pulls out a set of knives and explains how with his company, we can make as much money as we want, all while setting our own hours. He even pulls out a textbook saying about how this company's revolutionary tactics have even been featured in college textbooks. He opened to a page, his hand covering parts of it, making sure we can all clearly see the words Cutco in large letters on the page. Sad to say, a lot of the other interviewees were very impressed by this. One pregnant girl seemed very excited that she could work around her pregnancy and upcoming birth. David was going on and on about how much money he's made and how hard workers will rise to the top quickly. At this point, David said he needed to take a quick phone call and gave us 5 minutes to have some coffee, chit-chat, whatever. As he stepped away, he left his college textbook behind. Oops. So I picked it up, found the earmarked page, and read. As I thought, it was all about pyramid schemes, and it had Cutco as one of the largest examples. It goes on to talk about how these are essentially scams, not economically viable, etc, etc. So I decided to share this all with the group. I explain how pyramid schemes work, and how he's just scamming us. They seemed incredulous, so I said when David gets back, to ask him about what we need to pay to get started. That finally got everyone to realise what was going on. David walks in a few minutes later, and one of the girls in the group asked David what we need to get started. Well, all you need is your first set of knives to demonstrate. You can sell that one directly, or have them order one and keep that as your demo kit. Doesn't matter, just have to pay the startup fees for it. And that's when all hell broke loose. One kid started to get up and tell him to go F himself, saying he's wasting our time and that he's an a-hole for trying to pull this S. The pregnant girl is crying because she thought she found a place that would allow her to work despite being pregnant. David is clearly confused and flustered and asking who told them all this. When it becomes apparent I'm the wrench in the machine, David gets upset and starts telling me to leave. People are yelling at David, David is yelling at me, Cindy is trying to tell everyone she never met David before today and didn't know what this bull S was. Eventually, we all walk out, leaving David behind. As I'm walking to the door, I see leaning against the wall the sign that was in the window before, retail space for rent, call 1-800 blah blah. As I get into my car, I dial the number. Eventually I get through to a person and ask about the property for rent at the location of David's company. The nice lady on the phone apologised, saying they had just leased that property out. I asked if she knew how long the lease was for, as I was really interested in the property. She said she wasn't sure. They hadn't done the official paperwork yet. They were on their way to the space to sign everything with the leaseholder in a few hours. I told her everything that had just happened to me and about David using the space for a pyramid scheme. She got extremely upset, saying that this stuff happens all the time in the industry. They will go to sign and last minute the leaseholder will decide to opt out after using it for some fly-by-night operation. She thanked me for the info and I thought that was the end of it. Or so I thought. A few weeks later, I received an email from David, telling me how I ruined his life, about how the property management found out what was going on and weren't refunding his down payment on the space, saying he violated a clause in the paperwork he signed to hold the property, how he knew I was the one who called because I'm a terrible human being, etc, etc. Now he was out thousands for the space and supplies, how he only wanted to give us jobs and help us. It was a long, very angry email with several things said about me and my mother. So I called 1-800 blah blah again, spoke with the same lady I did before, and she was very interested in an email from David where he essentially admitted to what he was trying to do. Said it would help them all in the legal proceedings. And don't you know, I was more than happy to send that email along to her. Her lawyer said it should be an open and shut case at that point. I like to think I'm a helper. This next post is by MC New. My manager was an awful person to me, but I got her fired in an embarrassing fashion. Years ago, shortly after I graduated high school, I got a new job to support myself during college. The new gig was in a pet store, and I was working in the department that sold the fish, aquariums, reptiles and birds, etc, etc. The store manager was an awesome guy who I will call Kurt. Kurt was an old school guy. He went to work, worked hard and went home. And that's all he expected out of you as well. My immediate manager over my department was this large snaggletooth witch of a woman. I'll call her Stephanie. We got off to a bad start because she quickly found out that I knew more about reptiles than her. She preferred the fish, whereas I had kept snakes for the past 4 to 5 years. Her ego couldn't handle a fresh employee not needing her guidance. From then on, she was terrible to me. She singled me out to clean the goldfish tanks and had the other employees cover sales every day I worked. She would say rude things to me such as, "You are the weak link in my team. You are the reason I'm having problems in this department." Fast forward about a year, my hours had been cut by about 25%. I asked the store manager what the deal was and he told me that our department had just lost too much money between lack of sales and broken merchandise, etc. This puzzled me, but I didn't think much of it because everyone's hours were cut. Simultaneously, myself and a few co-workers had noticed something strange. Stephanie had recently taken much more interest in the customers. She insisted on helping certain customers and sending us to do busy work while they were there. A customer came in one evening and was talking to us about how nice Stephanie is. Turns out, Stephanie was breeding mice and selling them to customers outside of the store. We found out she was breeding all of her animals, her dogs, turtles, mice, and selling them to customers she met through our store. Not only was this taking business from us, our store had a couple corporate policies. We did not feed nor sell mice as live food for snakes, and we donated a lot of time and money to shelters, and we condemned breeding dogs and cats for sales. Stephanie was making money by selling animals to the customers, all the while her department had hours cut for all of its employees. It didn't quite make sense how this was costing us so much money, until one evening I thought I had figured it out. Stephanie was an otherwise lazy woman, but when one of her customers came in, she was by their side the whole time. I watched closely as she followed a customer around, helping them pick out a cart full of expensive aquarium decorations and terrarium supplies, like lights and bulbs. I followed and wrote down every item she grabbed. I wanted to see where this went. She directed the customer to a register and went to check them out. She's lazy and would never do this for any other customers. I noted the time and went back to work. I later spoke to other cashiers about Stephanie checking customers out, and they said that she only ever rang up certain customers and she acted weird when they did it. They suspected she was abusing coupons for them or applying hefty discounts. I got my co-workers to corroborate my story about the under-the-table animal sales and suspicious behaviour, and I went to go talk to Kurt. I handed him a paper with about 20 UPCs and the time I had written on it, and I said, "I think if you look up a transaction from Register 2 at this time, last night, you will find a large discount applied to it. These are the items I would expect you to find on that transaction." He was a bit puzzled and I explained everything to him. I told him I didn't want to make any accusations before because I wasn't sure, but after seeing her in action, I was pretty sure something was going on. He thanked me and assured me he would look into it. A couple weeks later, I was at work and I noticed Kurt was standing near the door watching closely. It just so happens Stephanie was coming in for a shift right about that time. The second she walked through the door, he called her over to his office. Apparently waiting in his office was a regional manager from corporate. He looked at the list I gave him and looked up transactions from the night before. He found one at the exact time I wrote, but it only had about half the items I listed, but every item that was on the receipt was on the list I gave him. This prompted him to watch her for a few weeks, and in that time frame, they found her to be taking her customers around shopping, personally taking them up to the register and scanning every other item and putting the expensive stuff into the cart without ringing it up. In that time span, she had given away over $1,500 in merchandise, and he looked back at the logs we keep for broken merchandise that is written off and found an excessive amount of aquarium supplies and decorations that were signed off by her. It was something like 1000% more written off broken merchandise than was found at the same time last quarter. All in all, she was charged with stealing/defrauding the store in over $3,500 in merchandise, and it just so happened that Kurt had already arranged for police to meet them after firing her to escort her out. I don't know if she went to jail, but I did watch her get walked out by police with about 20 employees staring. I wish I could have said something, but I had to settle for her making eye contact with me as she walked out, to which I gave her a quick wink. This next post is by Bleedy Butts. Uncle bankrupts his previous employer. Not sure if this is petty or pro or whatever, you be the judge. My uncle is an Indian doctor. In the 90s, there was a massive doctor's shortage in Australia, so the government gave him citizenship. Unfortunately, you still had to sit 3 expensive exams to work as a doctor in Australia. These exams cost thousands of dollars, only happened twice a year, had limited sitting spots and times, and had arbitrary pass/fail marks. So many Indian doctors ended up becoming taxi drivers/small businessmen, etc. My uncle decided instead he would reapply and go through Australian medical school. Sure enough, being a doctor for 10 plus years makes medical school easy, and my uncle was the top of his class. He decided since he was already pushing 40 plus and had a family, he would apply to become a GP, family physician, instead of applying to be a surgeon like most of his teachers had suggested. At the time, many desperate foreign doctors were applying for GP residency. They would essentially get treated like C. They would be forced to work unpaid overtime, they would not be given proper study time or leave to sit mandatory exams. They would pocket the meals/accommodation/study/leave allowances that you were supposed to be paid by the training college. They would roster you to work every Saturday/Sunday shift, and if you refused, they would give you a bad review and your training would be jeopardized. This mostly happened to foreign doctors, as most of them would be in bad debt and highly desperate for any sort of work. When my uncle graduated, he applied for GP training in a practice that is located within an Indian ethnic enclave, so that he would have access to religious food/schools etc. for the kids. Sure enough, this practice engaged in all of the above effery. My uncle would work every single Saturday shift. During his dedicated study time, he would have to come into work. He got reprimanded for not overcharging patients in line with their framework. Worst of all, when my aunt was really sick and hospitalized, they wouldn't give him any time off to look after her and the kids. The owner of the clinic was a white GP who was openly racist against Indians, Asians, and Aboriginal people, who are a large percentage of the clientele of this clinic. My uncle bided his 3 years, and as soon as his documentation came through in making him a GP, he quit that instant. He went down to the local bank and got a loan to open up his own practice. All his old patients quickly moved with him to the new practice. The first year, he struggled, but his practice quickly became known and word spread. Surprise, surprise, foreign trained doctors actually work well and care about their patients if you actually care about them and give them appropriate wages and living conditions. More patients and more doctors looked to work with my uncle. Within 2 years, my uncle had a GP practice that had 4 doctors, 2 nurses, 2 trainees, and a manager. His practice easily rivaled his original teacher's. He then started 2 more GP practices with the money he was pulling in. These practices trapped his old teacher's clinic in a 2-kilometer triangle. He would advertise heavily and make sure he could take as much business from his old teacher as he could. Within 5 years, his old teacher's practice went from hiring 6 doctors, 4 nurses, and 6 trainees to just 1 doctor, his old teacher, and no one else. His old teacher tried to sell up his practice to other doctors, but no one would purchase it, given how successful my uncle's 3 surrounding practices were. He then tried to sell it to my uncle, who refused to buy it, even at a ridiculously low sale price. Instead, he waited for the bank to repossess his old teacher's clinic, and then purchased it for a bit more money from the bank. My uncle then repurposed the building into his main offices from where he runs his other 3 practices. He made sure to redevelop his old boss's room into a staff toilets, just as one final tribute to the humanity that was his old boss. Wow, that was satisfying. W Uncle. This last post is by Jeremy R. Cook. EK chops down my tree. Costs her £500,000. It's been 2 years, and I can finally post about this. This is juicy, so get ready. Background information. We live in an old and big manor that has been split into 3 attached houses. The houses are about 150 years old and were built around 5 huge giant sequoias which were about 200 years old. In the UK, giant sequoias are very rare, and the 2 in our garden upped the house price by about £60,000. We live next to 2 really nice neighbours, 1 young couple and 1 old couple. The story. Unfortunately, our old neighbours passed away, so their child and her family moved in. Let's call her Jo. Jo was instantly a pain in the A. We had been sharing chickens with the previous neighbours, and Jo agreed to keep sharing them. However, on her nights, she would constantly forget to put them away, so we would have to check them every night anyway. One night, her little brats thought it would be funny to open our personal duck pen in the night, which led to a mass slaughter later. The chickens went the same way. About 2 years ago, there was a storm, and one of her sequoias somehow fell over and died. They were distraught, understandably, but from then on, the jealousy started. She would constantly complain about how lucky we were to have 2 sequoias in our garden, and how our sequoia was making too much shade in their garden. It wasn't. Anyway, we just thought it was Jo being a pain. There were a few dry threats like they will chop it down or maybe the next storm will blow it down. Until we came back from a holiday in France to find a huge 6-meter stump and nothing else. I mean, how the F do you get rid of a 100-feet tree in like 2 weeks? 2 of our old British oak trees had been crushed as well. My mum and sisters were crying, my dad were red in the face, and we had no evidence Jo had done it. She claimed that there had been a storm and she had tried to get rid of it. We had a security camera at the front of the house, but you can get in the back if you go through a few fields. We then were given an £8,000 bill for damages to our property, and to have the tree chopped up and remove the wood alone would have been worth a small fortune. We had lost all hope, and 2 weeks had passed when my dad came running in from the garden. We had put up a wildlife camera a few months ago and had caught everything. We got a lawyer on the phone and started our revenge. We got a tree surgeon out who said it was an original specimen brought into the UK in 1860, along with the 2 that were in Elveston Castle Country Park. There were 218 around the UK, but only 60 now. He also told us to call out an engineer because the roots might be in the foundation, so when they rot it could damage the house. Turns out, we would need to redo the foundations. Then we took Jo to court and sued them for damages to property, trespassing, and lots of other small claims. The tree would cost $250,000 to have another sequoia that was 200 years put in and looked after. It's basically impossible. Plus the damage to the foundation, which was $200,000, and the 2 oaks, which were another $25,000. So with the smaller claims, it went to about £500,000 or $700,000 US. They had to move out. And we now have paid off the mortgage, done a lovely loft and kitchen conversion, and have basically done up the house and garden, as well as plant a 60-year-old sequoia tree in the back garden. We also had our kitchen counter and table made from the old sequoia. We now have a new lovely family living next to us, who we share chickens, ducks, and pygmy goats with. They're very nice, and I make a fortune babysitting their kids. And I think that's going to be it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the stories in r/ProRevenge. Let me know what you'd like to listen to next in the comment section below, and also hit that subscribe button because I post new Reddit content every single day. There are 2 videos on the screen, one of which is for the most recent video, and the other is for a video the YouTube algorithm thinks you'll want to watch next. My name is Trey, this was Reload Reacts, and I will see you in the next video.